Hey everybody, in this week's video we're looking at how we can use line names to make it easier to use the CSS Grid. Hi and welcome to this video. I'm so glad you're here. There has been a ton of new people at this channel, checking out my videos, so just thank you so much. So for all you new guys, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Just in case you're really new and this is your first video, my name is Kevin and I help you learn how to make the web and how to make it look good while you're at it. In last week's video, I looked at a super simple way that we can use the CSS Grid. It was just like a basic introduction. Let's set up a super basic grid using the most basic properties we can, and then just use spans to either use span rows, span columns, and that was it. So there was nothing very complicated about it. In this video, we're going to be looking at how we can also use line numbers to dictate exactly where on the grid we should be going, but also when you're using the line numbers, it gets confusing sometimes. And the example I'm using is going to be relatively simple, even though it's a layout you could definitely use in one of your projects. But it's going to be simple enough, and even then the line numbers are kind of weird. The way the line numbers work, I mean, I understand how they did it, but it's just, it can get kind of, trying to remember which line you're dealing with is a pain. So instead of trying to remember numbers, you can actually give them specific names, and that just makes your life so much easier. So I want to show you how you can do that, and by doing that, how we can get this really cool like sort of overlay effect that you used to have to use negative margins for and a whole bunch of crap like that. The grid, we don't need to do that anymore. And you can't really, well, I guess you could sort of do it. No, you couldn't do it with the spans like we looked at last time. This really needs some explicit start and end points to pull it off. So yeah, it's a cool thing. The grid, it's just amazing. I'm so happy it's here. I'm still wrapping my mind around it. I'm letting you guys know now, I don't have a 100% understanding of everything it can do yet. I'm still learning along with you guys, but as I'm learning new stuff, I want to be showing it to you. And yeah, the naming of the lines is one of the first things I learned. I'm so happy I did, so I definitely want to let you know about it. So let's jump right into it. Alright guys, here we are in CodePen to start this off. So the link of this will be down in the description below if you want to follow along or if you want to play with my code or do whatever you want with it. You'll notice I have done a little bit of work right now and it doesn't look so good. I know I've been telling you guys that this channel is all about learning how to make the web and how to make it look good too, and I've been ignoring the look good too part of it, and I'll be ignoring it a little bit in this video too. It won't look super sexy, but I think it's gonna, the layout of it's sexy, just not necessarily all the visuals. But that's gonna get there when we do the big grid series. I'm gonna build a full-on website. That one's gonna be focused not only on using the grid to make a full website, but it's also going to be looking at how we can make it look good while we're at it. With that out of the way though, let's look at what I've got here. I have 3 sections. So I have a section here that's sort of my title section, a section 2, which is my little info thing here, that's going to be 3 columns, and then a section 3 that's going to have a container inside of it that's going to do center my content, where this could be like the rest of the page. So my markup on this one is really simple. I think this is all I need. So again, this is just 3 divs here that are going to be 3 columns when we get to there. So I'm going to pop open my CSS. I have done a little bit in here, but it's pretty much just to set the colors and my fonts and stuff like that. Nothing much else, and I haven't done much. And I put a background up on this one here. Another thing that I do want to mention is I am using Firefox, and I'm using Firefox Nightly, which is sort of the developer version, and it's because I want to use their inspector. It's better than the Chrome one for the grid. You can actually see the grid, and you're going to see that it can do some other really cool stuff while we're at it too. So if you are using the grid and you're having trouble with it, I didn't do it in the last video, I only thought of it after, but using, you're going to see how it works, and it's really cool if you didn't see it in the first video I did when I checked out the grid. My very first one, the live one, that was a while ago. So what do we want to do? We want to set up our grid, and on this one I'm actually going to set it up on the body. I don't know if I'd normally set it up on the body, but I feel like for just a simple demo like this, it will work pretty good. So what we're going to do, and just what I want this to look like actually just really quickly, is I want this big area with the image to sort of take about, maybe 3/4 of the page, half the page. Overlapping that a little bit, I want this. My 3 columns are going to sort of overlap it a bit, and then my more content could go here, will just be what fills up the rest down at the bottom. And actually, I'm gonna make these 3 columns before, and I'm just going to do that really simple. I'm going to do a display flex on my section 2. So right away I get 3 columns there, so that makes it nice and awesome. We can do a nice little justify content space around, and as well as, do I need anything else? I'm going to leave it like that for now. Maybe we'll need something a little bit after, but I think, let's see. I'm going to leave it like that. So far, so good. Just so I have my 3 columns and the sizing is a little better. All right, so for my body here, what do I want to do? First we're going to do a nice little display grid. And while I'm doing this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it without the grid line names first, or at least I'll try to. Now when I do display grid, just one really quick thing, you'll notice that things change a little bit. So the collapsing margins don't collapse anymore once things are in the grid. A little bit like Flexbox in that sense. So what I'm going to do, let's set up my columns first. So I'm going to say a grid template columns, and I want one that's going to be just 1 columns. Yeah. So I'm going to do 1 FR. So I'm going to put like just an empty space here on the side that I don't want content always to be in. Then I'm going to have a main content area in the middle. That's sort of like what you'd traditionally have as a container, and then my little empty space on the side there. So let's do an 80 viewport width and then 1 FR. And we can close that down. So you can see that it's worked. And things are automatically coming in. So here's my 1 FR. So it's taking up one, just FR. If you're not sure what that is, it's 1 fraction. So it's 1 fraction of the remaining space, or the leftover space. So this is taking up 80 viewport width, and it's stuck at 80 viewport width. So there's 20 left, 10 and 10. Now if I switch this over to a 2 FR, of the remaining space, now it's also going to work based on like the size of the content, but you can see here as this is getting bigger, this one now is a lot bigger than that one. So it won't shrink thing. Well, now it's getting a little side scrolling and stuff, but at the smallest sizes they might look the same, but as they get bigger you'll notice that this one is taking up more space because there's more available space for it to take. But in this case I want them both to be the same. So just 1 FR, 80 viewport width, 1 FR, or leftover spaces. Now for my columns, what I want to do is I want to do a grid template, not my columns, my rows I should say. So I wanted that big first area, so I'm going to do a 50 viewport height, I guess. Then I want to do, I want a little overlapping section, so I'm going to do a 5M, you'll see how this comes together. And if you have a little sketch of things going into this, it could really help. So I have 50, then a 5, and I think I'm just going to do an auto. It can figure out the rest for me. Is pretty much what auto means on that. So now when I want to start positioning stuff, if I was going the traditional way, what I'd have to do is figure out all my line numbers, and that can be a pain in the butt. So let's go find my body. And this is where anything that has a display grid on it, I can click on that and it's going to highlight the grid here. So we can see my grid coming up. So the way the numbering system works is like I have line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4. And if I'm going up and down, I have line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4. So that's all good and dandy. So let's just say here I wanted so I have my section 1 here, and let's say I want it to go from this side all the way to that side. What I could do, so let's go find section 1 here. So what I could say is grid column, and I could start at line 1, and then I do that, and I say end at line 4. And it's going to take up that whole space because it's starting at line 1, it's going and ending at line 4. If I did a 1/3, it would instead end at the 3rd line. And one thing you might forget, always the first line is always the very first line, and the last line is always the last one. It's not 0, 1, 2, 3. It's literally 1, 2, 3, 4. So I could do something like that, and it's going to work. Now for this one here now, that's my section 2. I want that one to be in this area over here. So if I go on to section 2, I would say grid column, and I would say 2/3, and it would fill up that space. this is a really simple layout, and already I find that's like weird, right? I don't know. And imagine if you had like a 12 columns or something, you'd probably be like, oh my goodness, what's going on? It's gonna, is this 3? Is it 4? Is it 12? Why do I have 12 columns? Why is there a 13th line? Crap like that. So I do find it not necessarily the most intuitive, and we're gonna see that more like up and down now. I don't actually want this placed like this, so I'm going to start naming them. This video is about naming them. So I just wanted, this works, and on a simple layout, you can definitely get away with it, but personally, I just find it so much easier to name our lines. So let's go and look at how we can do that right now. And I'm actually, well, we could. We can name all the lines, so let's name all of them. To name a line, you have to put it in square brackets, and you just put it before, right there. So I'm actually going to extend this out a little bit so we can see what I'm doing. So this will be naming my first line. Now, because it's in square brackets, if this was Sass, it wouldn't compile. So I'm actually not doing this. This is all written in vanilla CSS. Meant to say that at the start, and I completely forgot. So just note, if you are a big Sass fan, for the moment, we won't be able to name lines. I'm making a sad face right now, even though you can't see it. Which sort of stinks, but we can still do grid areas, which is great, and we'll be seeing that in the next video. So let's call this page start. Should I call it page start? Yeah, page start's fine. Then I'm going to have content start. Then I'm going to have, so my first line here is my page start, and then I have one empty space of 1FR. Then I have my content start, and then I have an empty space of, or not an empty space, but I have a space of 80 viewport width. Then I will have a content end, and then I will have that empty, not an empty, I keep saying empty space. Then I'll have a space of 1FR, and I will have my page end. So now, instead of having to worry about these numbers, you just have to remember what you called stuff. So I can literally now write page start over page end. And it's going to look exactly the same. And just to show you, if I did this to content end, it's going to stop where that line right there. So I don't want that to be content end though. I want this one to go to page end. And this one over here, I could change this to content start over content end. So I want it to start at my content start, go to my content end. That is awesome. So I love the fact that we can do that. Now I'm also want to name my rows over here. So I'm going to call this my hero start. So I'm starting my hero area all the way at the top, and again, line 1 is this first one up here. So I'm doing a hero start. Then I'm going to come down to this line, and I'm going to call this one my info start, because I have my little info boxes here. So I want this to start there. Now what I can do, which is fun, because I'm going to have, now I have this 5M. So what I want this to start here, but I actually want my hero area to end on this line. So I'm going to have my 5M, then I'll have my hero end. Then I'll have another 5M, and I'll have my info end. And then I can just call this, let's call it page bottom. Oh, we can just call it bottom. It's not really, oh, page bottom is fine. Page, or content bottom, maybe. Let's just call it bottom. So again, that's, if we look here, hero start, then info start, hero end, info end, and then we have an auto that's going to fill up once our content actually is in there. So let's go take a look at how this is going to work. And it's really, I really like how this works now. So section 1, my grid column is okay, but now we want to change my grid row. So grid row goes from hero start, and it ends at hero end. Now my section 2 is actually getting pushed down, but as soon as I do my grid row, I'm going to do my info start over info end. And now it's overlapping like that. So again, this is my hero start, and this one down here is my hero end. And this is my info start and my info end. So this overlaps on top of the other one. I think that's awesome. I love the fact that we can do that. And then let's take my last one here. And my grid column on this one will be my page start over page end. So it should fill up the whole space. And then my grid row will be, it's going to start at the hero end and go to bottom. Now you'll notice that it's overlapping on top of this one, which is not what we want, obviously. Another thing is the auto just takes the amount of space that it needs. So let's just make this a bit bigger, or we're not going to see it at all. Padding 150 pixels 0, just so, there we go. So the auto is just, it's taking up the space that it needs to take up. There's no set width on it. It's automatically adjusting to the space that it needs to adjust to. So yeah, this one is going on top of that one, and that sucks. That's not what we want, obviously. I don't want it to cover. Luckily, when we're using this stuff, when we do have something in the grid, we can do a z-index on it. So z-index of, let's just put 10, and it will pop up and come on top of everything else. So that's really, really awesome and cool, and I'm super happy with that. And we can actually, why is this here? I want that to be down a little more. Section 1. Let's just do, and this is where I mentioned it in the last video, and I'm going to mention it again today, because you always hear like, oh, what's the point of Flexbox? The grid is so much better. The grid is two-dimensional and is really, really awesome, but Flexbox still has a place. So I can do display flex on this, and then justify content center, align items center, except that should be like that. And bang, right in the middle. I'd have to play with that a little bit, actually. And actually, let's go back up here. Maybe make this like 60% or VH instead. It's centering down to this point, so maybe it's not perfect for this example, but it's just to show you Flexbox still has a purpose. I used Flexbox also to put 3 columns here, and we can fix one little more thing on this, actually. Because now that it's taking up that much space, this looks really weird, that we have this big empty space on the bottom. But luckily, because it is using display flex, I can do an align items center. And it will center it vertically in that space as well, and that just looks a lot nicer right now. So Flexbox still has a place, and it's near and dear to my heart, but the grid does really cool stuff too. Now, to finish this video off, one thing that we can do. Now, they were supposed to implement a subgrid, or they weren't supposed to implement. They talked about implementing a subgrid. The subgrid never came. It would have been cool. It might still be in the future. Apparently, they're arguing over the best way to implement it. But because we don't have it now, and sometimes it would be really useful to have a subgrid, we can sort of cheat a little bit. Well, it's not really cheating. It's just the way we have to work until we have a subgrid. So my container here, let's just give it a background of pink so we can see it. Because I want this big content area. I don't necessarily think a light blue would be the best background on it, but it's nice that we could have an area with a different background color still filling up something on here. And then having just the content held in the middle in my content area. So with a container, and remember my container is inside of that last thing. So my section 3 is taking up all this space, and then my container is living inside of there. So what I want to do is I want this to be display grid. That's awesome, except the only problem is right now I can't use the other grid. Now this is where if I did a display subgrid and the subgrid worked, I would have been able to use my original line names and everything. If I just do a display grid, I can't use my original line names. This is its own distinct grid, so it's not looking at the existing lines. If I come into here now and go on my section 3 and come on my container and we turn this grid on, you'll see there's no existing grid on there right now. So I can't use my grid names at all, and that sucks. Except I can, because I can say my grid template columns are inherit. because my grid template lines are inherit, they're not showing here. Grid template columns. Spelt it right. I'm fairly certain. Oh, you know why I did that wrong. Guys, I hope you were yelling at me while I was doing this. I don't want my container to be a grid. I want my section 3 to be the grid. So let's go and look at that again. So I'm going to do a display of grid on this one. So again, let's go take a look. So we can see that there's the grid, but it doesn't have any lines on it. And I sort of spoiled it now, but grid template columns inherit. So it's inheriting my grid template. There we go. You can see it's actually working. I have the same ones. So now my container, I can use my grid column of content start over content end. And my container now lives in the middle as part of a grid inside of section 3 using the same line names that I was using for my big grid on top. So it's not an official subgrid, but it's easy enough. We just need one extra line where we can inherit. And if you needed your rows as well, you could easily enough just do an inherit on your rows and it would work magically there as well. And this would actually work pretty well because, as I said, more content goes here. This is set to auto. So if we had some lorem ipsum text that I just happen to have stored away on the side here. So let's go and insert that in. P times 2, paste, and get your images, and this is just going to keep growing. My grid is just expanding along longer and longer and longer. So this could actually work for like a full-on website, and I don't see any reason why not. And there we go. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please hit the thumbs up, hit the like button, all of that other stuff. Leave a comment down below. Let me know you liked it. If you have any questions about the grid, or you think I could have done something differently. In the last video, a few people gave me really good suggestions on things I could have actually done to make it easier. So if you have any better experience or more experience with the grid, let me know about it. And I'm building all of this up to get to building a full-on website using the grid. But yeah, thanks a lot for being here. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. I bring you new videos every single week. And of course, until next time, don't forget to make your corner of the internet just a little bit more awesome.